Hello and welcome to this week's Women's Football Chat. My name is Chris Gadsby. I'm here every Thursday at 6 p.m. bringing you the very latest from the third and fourth tiers of women's football here in England. That is the FA Women's National League. And on the day where Karen Carney's 128-page report into the women's game has been published, my word, do we have a lot to unpack on this week's show. We also have coming up news of plenty of managerial coach departures, plus, of course, the semi-final draw of the summer knockout tournament. Two of last year's semi-finalists in Cheshire United and Wolverhampton Wanderers are both still in this year's competition. They are joined by Leafield Athletic and Norton and Stockton Ancients. So we'll see later on in the show which of those four sides get drawn against each other. But before we get into that, we've also got plenty of news about the show to talk about as well. And we may as well start there. We'll start with a bit of stuff about the show. You will notice there, particularly if you're watching this version, have a bit of a new look to the show for the upcoming season. I thought it was about time that started to make something a bit of a logo. We are now on 93 episodes, so getting up towards 100. Now, I'm no logo creator, but I do quite like it. So it's certainly better than just text that says Women's Football Chat. So you'll see that popping up on all of the future videos. Right, let's go through these managerial changes then. We have 4 to talk about. There may have been more. If I've missed them, I do apologise. Let me know on Twitter. I'll cover them next week. So, first and foremost, down in Wales, after winning Division 1 South West, Jamie Phillip has left Cardiff City Ladies. He says, well, it's a much worse feeling making a decision to leave something you love over being sacked, that's for sure. I've decided to step down as the manager of Cardiff City LFC, leaving this club in a much healthier position than when I joined, especially financially, makes me very proud. Over the last 2 years, I've given my absolute life to this club. No one will ever understand the time, energy, effort, money, and all the little extras I have given over the last year. It's now time to enjoy a little break. I've no idea what's next and loved every minute of being in the women's game. It was important for me to make sure that Cardiff were in a position to continue their amazing journey before moving on, and I wish them all the very best. I'm now looking forward to the next challenge, whatever that will be, but for now I leave as a manager of the year and a league champion. I thank everyone who has played a part in the incredible journey over the last 2 seasons. Now that was a tweet and an announcement that, I'll be honest, I really did not expect to read, particularly after winning Division 1 South West and getting back into the Southern Premier Division for Cardiff. No indication yet about what will happen with Cardiff, who Cardiff will get in. But that was a very big shock to me when I read that. However, that was not as much of a shock as when I then read on the 7th of July, one from Nottingham Forest, of course, my former club. Nottingham Forest can confirm that Andy Cook will move on from his role as women's first team head coach. Cook took charge of Forest Women back in July 2019, managed the Reds on 100 occasions. He guided the women's team to 3 pieces of silverware during his time at the club, the League Plate in 2022 and the League and Cup double, as Forest were crowned champions of National League North and the League Cup this season. Nottingham Forest Chief Football Officer Ross Wilson said the club would like to place on record their appreciation to Andy for all his efforts over the last 4 years. He lives a long way from Nottingham and is committed to significant travel time during his spell at the club. We'd like to thank him for his dedication. The women's team has seen significant progress on and off the pitch under Andy's leadership, and we are moving forward into the 23-24 season strongly. We wish Andy all the best in his new opportunity. Andy has also said he has made the decision to move on from this great football club. This club and the city was everything he wanted it to be. He'll be forever grateful for the opportunity David Cook and Lee Billiard gave him in 2019. He will miss everybody at the club. To all the staff from John, Will, Simon, Kaz, everyone who welcomed him at the City Ground on day one, he's loved every minute working to make Forest a success. Knowing how hard you all work for the club always gives me motivation to give everything I had to. Every player he's had the pleasure and privilege to work with. You are the reason the club has become a successful one. And then it's particular mention to Steve Gray in his 11th season with Forest Women, who's someone who never gets any limelight or credit, which I know is the way that Steve likes it, but I have to echo that as well. So, yeah, and see what's next for Andy, but commuting down from the northeast a lot was a lot of travelling for him. But yes, from a personal point of view, absolutely gutted that Andy has left Forest. But it is what it is. So yeah, best of luck to Andy Cook. Right, next, also in the Northern Premier Division, interim head coach Jay Bradford, this is of Burnley now, has also departed. She'll be leaving the club to take up role as assistant coach at Rangers Women. After joining the Clarets in November 2022 as assistant coach to Jonathan Morgan, after spending 7 years at Coventry United, in February 2023 she was named interim head coach when Morgan departed for Women's Championship outfit Sheffield United. In her tenure, Bradford helped guide the Claret women to a third place finish in the Northern Premier Division with a record point total. And Burnley FC's ambitions and commitment to growing women's football remain a key priority. They will update supporters on a women's head coach appointment in the coming weeks. And that was only on July the 11th. Which was only a couple of days ago, so it might be a while until we know anything from Burnley. So those are three very successful managers leaving. One in then from Doncaster Rovers Bells, their head coach Alexandra Brito Nogueira. He believes he's arrived at the club at the ideal time as he plots a rise up the women's football pyramid. Portuguese has formed a fresh management team with fellow new arrival manager Sam Winch. So they've got manager and head coach there. He feels the pair have been gifted the perfect circumstances to achieve the club's goals. And he says, I do not think it could have come at a better time. The structure we have, I truly believe I can help us. Everyone will play an important role in the development of the club and the group and helping the development of more young girls. Meeting the players, I think we have a very good group to take us back to where the club belongs. Right now, that is getting into Tier 3, but I have no doubt in the future we'll be aiming for the Championship. Now, of course, Doncaster Rovers Bells have moved from the Division 1 Midlands into Division 1 North. So entirely new set of teams for Doncaster Rovers to come up against next season. So that's their new coach in. Of course, that means there are plenty of teams that are looking for coaches. As soon as coaches are appointed, we will let you know on this show. So those are the managerial changes. I'm going to save Karen Carney's report towards the end. It's quite in depth. We're going to go through it in a lot of detail. So before that, let's talk about this show moving forward into next season. So everything will stay the same in terms of Thursday, 6 p.m, all the rest of it. You see I've got a new logo. Those who have been watching on a weekly basis will know, of course, that I'm working on a Predictor League and fantasy football. So let's show you all of where I am really with that, just to keep you in the loop. It is definitely happening. I put a lot of work into this so far. It's definitely going to happen. So let's have a look at where I am. Let's start with fantasy football because the Predictor League also leads into something else. Right, this then is where I am currently at with fantasy football. So as you can see, if I go down it extremely quickly, that these are the 1,523 players which are in the system having either played 5 games or more in the FAWNL last season, or being with or 5 games for a team that's now in the FAWNL, i.e. Rugby, Abingdon, Worthing, etc. Or players that have been signed so far this season. Now, this is already going to be out of date by the time this comes out, because I've seen that Leafield are announcing another signing today, and no doubt they won't be the only side. So this is getting updated all the time. But let me just take you through the system, really. So on the left-hand side, we have all of the players, the team that they play for, and the position that they are in. Now, all of these stats here are what they did last season in the FAWNL. So when it comes down to clean sheets, yes, I had to go through every single game that every single team kept a clean sheet in and note down every single starting 11 player in those games. And that is how I have come out with the value. There is no my own opinion in this. It is all down to the stats. There is the only place I've got my own opinion in, and I will come on to it later, is with teams that have moved. I've added a bit of a coefficient to them, but I'll get onto that in a minute. So, as you can see here, if we take, let's just take, because she's at the top, Olivia Cook of Forest, their defender. All the players have started on a base value of £5 million. And again, this might change depending on the budgets and what I come down to. I've still got another 5 weeks yet. And then for every game that player started last season, they gained £100,000 in value. If they were subbed on, they gained £50,000 in value. If they scored a goal, a defender or a goalkeeper scoring a goal, £300,000, a midfielder scoring a goal, £200,000, a striker scoring a goal, £100,000. Similarly with clean sheets, clean sheets for defenders and goalkeepers, £200,000 per clean sheet, midfielders £50,000 per clean sheet, and strikers nothing for a clean sheet. You lose £100,000 worth in value if you get a yellow card. You lose £400,000 worth of value if you get a red card. And you gain £100,000 worth of value with a Player of the Match award. So you can see, for example, here, so Olivia Cook started at £5 million, gained 1.9 million in starting games, scored a couple of goals, so that's another 600,000 on there, kept plenty of clean sheets, another 2 million onto that, gives you a value of 9.75 million. If you compare that to, for example, Georgia Hewitt, again, just someone near the top, because they didn't start as many games, get as many clean sheets, the value is a bit lower. The only place where there is a bit of a kind of opinion in here is for teams that have been promoted, i.e. Stourbridge here, for example. Though these here are the values that they've been given based on the stats, and then here, I'm going to round these to the nearest 5, are the values that they're going to get going into the new season. The reason being is that on the promotion, what they did last season, I've given an 85% coefficient to, because, for example, and again, nothing against these teams, but scoring a goal against Long Eaton United is not the same as scoring a goal against Forest, which they would be doing next season. So just made it so that there's just a slight coefficient on it. The same works the other way with rugby coming down and teams going down. They've got another coefficient on there. So as you can see, 1,523 players so far. What I am missing is plenty of teams, for example here, Moneyfields, where either there isn't a website or there is a website but the players aren't listed on there, or the players are listed on there but their positions aren't. I'm missing positions for a lot of players. If I don't get them, I can't give them values and can't put them in the right area on the system for you to be able to choose them. I'm hoping that once all the signings settle down, teams will be adding their website, updating it, telling us where they play. Then I'll be able to slot everything in. So that's the main database for fantasy football. If we then move on to the user interface, and again, I'm still working on this. This is just what I put together while I was on holiday last week. So all of the players, this is just for the Northern Premier Division. All of the players down the left-hand side, you can see over here, with player name, team, position, value. Set out in a 4-4-2 formation here, substitutes down the side. 15 players will be in your squad. I've taken a lot of the inspiration here from Fantasy Premier League, but I can't get quite as many different points variables in because of the lack of stats in the FAWNL. So, your starting goalkeeper, if you click on the player, you get a drop-down menu and you can choose from any of the goalkeepers that were in the FAWNL last year. Let's just change Shannon Turner to Amy Preston for the sake of it. If you do that, you will see that it changes the team that they play for and the value based off the database on the other sheet. That happens all the way through, and I'm adding up here the sum of all of the player values, and it tells you, your team value is 102.25 million. The budget is 100, therefore it's gone red, and you can't, that's a team that's not allowed. If you go back and we'll put, say, Rebecca Thomas in for Wolves, that then brings the player wages down to 99.39 million, and therefore that team, would be allowed. In terms of value, this team itself wouldn't be at the moment because you have 3 Forest players in it, 3 Wolves players in it, and we're only going to be allowed 2, but that was just me playing around. So that's where I am in terms of Fantasy League at the moment. So it's definitely happening. I've just got to sort the user interface out, finish the database off. If anybody out there that's watching this is a whiz with computers and can make something a lot better than this, by all means get in touch with me at Chris_Gadsby on Twitter, and more than happy to talk, because this is just what I can come up with on Excel. What I'll do is I'll turn all this into a Google Sheet, embed it onto the website. Everyone who wants to play will get a page similar to this that they can use. I'll password protect it so nobody else can see your team, and also so that I can see your team for all of the stats, and I can lock it in place at the deadline each week. But that's where I'm at the moment when it comes down to the fantasy football. The one thing I'll say, I've said it on the article as well, which I'll show you in a minute, I am not a huge team of people with Opta statistics around me doing Fantasy Premier League. I'm one man in my study, and bear in mind that I'm doing 72 teams and Fantasy Premier League is 20 as well. Bear with me. I will do it the best I can, and I will get round to everything eventually. So that is where I'm at with Fantasy Premier League. Now, moving on from that, we are going on to the Women's Football Chat website. Yes, I've now got myself a website. www.womensfootballchat.wordpress.com is where we're going for the Women's Football Chat. This is going to be your hub for fantasy football and the Predictor League. So, this is just the homepage with just articles on it. This is just me setting it up. There's a page about the show. That is just basically takes you to YouTube so you can see the show. Fantasy football. This is the thing where I think a lot of people are going to be going. So, this is where you can find all of the information about the inaugural year of Tier 3 and Tier 4 fantasy football. 1,500 players there. These are going to take you, you will see, to essentially the Google Sheet with all of the information and stuff on it. Here are the rules. 15 players, 100 million. Essentially, when you have to put the team together by, how player prices can change throughout the season. This is how all the points are going to be awarded. So starting a game, subbed on, goals scored, clean sheets, yellow cards, red cards, player of the match awards. Again, not as many variations in points as on the Fantasy Premier League. However, I'm limited again in full time. So whereas the Premier League will know exactly when players are subbed on full time, sometimes you don't. So that's Fantasy Premier League. We'll leave Predictor League for a moment. FAWNL tables. These are just basically, you'll recognise these from the screens off the show. So they will be updated throughout the season to help you see which teams are doing well and which aren't. Stats. There's nothing on here yet, but this will be kind of your fantasy football stats hub. So it will have games started, games subbed on, goals, clean sheets, cards, fantasy points. So you can see who's doing well, who's not doing well, help you choose your team. And then we get into the Predictor Leagues. Now, Predictor Leagues are very, very simple in comparison to fantasy football. These are all set up. You can join these now if you want to. So the way this works, you have to submit your predictions 2 hours before games scheduled to take place. So midday on a Sunday or 5:45 on a midweek. 1 point if you get the correct winner or a draw. 2 points if you predict the correct goal difference between the two sides. So for example there, if you predict Stourbridge to win 2-0, they win 3-1. You've got the 2-goal difference the same. You get 2 points. You get 4 points if you predict the correct result exactly. So if you predict Stourbridge to win 2-0, they win 2-0. You get 4 points. These, as I said, are all set up other than me inputting the fixtures because we don't have fixtures yet. Now this is using a site called Kicktip, which is a site though you can do custom prediction leagues. There's adverts all over it, ignore those. So if we have a look at the schedule, I bet there isn't a schedule at the minute. Well, I had to put in some dates to set it up. These aren't leaked fixtures, by the way. If you notice, all the teams are in alphabetical order. I just had to set something up. So what will happen is every when the results go in by when the fixtures come out, you can then type in results. If I just make random results up here, just make random, and you'll be able to submit your predictions. Then after the games have happened, when I go in and submit the results, there will be a leaderboard. As you can see, I'm currently the only person on it, of course, because this is the first anyone's hearing about this. And then we'll be able to see over the course of the season who's best at doing the predictions. This also has a table on there if you're interested in that as well. There is one of those for each of the 6 leagues. So, as I said, because someone who supports Swindon might not be interested in Newcastle against Stoke, you can do just your league. You can do just Tier 4, just Tier 3, do all 6 if you want. Again, bit of fun, but hopefully that will get things through and get things going nicely. So that's my plan for next season. So Predictor Leagues are all set up. You can join those now by going onto the website and then signing up on Kicktip. And then Fantasy Football, I'm going to keep going through with the database. If you do know a way of doing it slightly better than I've got there, by all means, let me know. And I'm just going to keep updating that database as best I can. If you want to take part in Fantasy Football, drop me a message on Twitter. I can send you the link to the Google Sheet when I have it. Particularly, as long as you tell me which division you want. Again, you can do all 6 Fantasy Football divisions if you want. Let me know which one you want. I'll get you all set up. So that is the state of play with Fantasy Football, Predictor League, new website, new logo. That's the show going into next season. So let's now get into the real crux of this week's show. Actually, no, let's not get into the crux of this week's show, because before I get into that, let's have the semi-final draw of the summer knockout tournament. 4 teams left to go. Chesham United, Leafield Athletic, Norton Stockton Ancients and Wolves. Who will they get in the final 4? Find out now. Here we go then. It's the final time this year that this box is coming out. The semi-final draw of the 2023 summer knockout. We have 2 returning semi-finalists and 2 new semi-finalists this year. Chesham United and Wolves back into the final 4 again. They are joined this time around by Leafield Athletic and Norton and Stockton Ancients, both of who had a very strong quarter-final tie, and they are a force to be reckoned with in this final 4. As before then and in the previous rounds, the polls will go live at about 6:30 tonight. That's Thursday. And they will go through until midday on Tuesday. And then we will have our 2 finalists and, of course, the 3rd and 4th place draw as well. Ball numbers then for you, very short and straightforward today. Chesham United are number 1, Leafield Athletic number 2, Norton and Stockton Ancients number 3, and Wolverhampton Wanderers number 4. So just 2 ties to be drawn in the semi-final. Let's get straight down to it. And there is number 1, the defending champions, Chesham United. Chesham United, number 1. And in a repeat of last year's semi-final, they take on Wolverhampton Wanderers. Chesham United against Wolverhampton Wanderers. Last year's semi-final has happened again. Last year, Chesham United were the side that came out on top. Will it be different this time around? And that means that number 2, Leafield Athletic, will take on number 3, Norton and Stockton Ancients. So we are guaranteed to have a new finalist this year. But will Chesham be able to defend their crown, or will Wolves go one better than they did last year and get through into that grand final? Get voting 6:30 tonight. The polls open. They go through to midday on Tuesday. Chesham against Wolves. Leafield Athletic against Norton and Stockton Ancients. There we go then. A repeat of last year's semi-final. Wolverhampton Wanderers against Chesham United. Leafield Athletic against Norton and Stockton Ancients in the other semi-final. So we're guaranteed to have at least 1 new finalist this season. Will Wolves be able to go 1 round further than they did last year when Chesham knocked them out in the dying moments? We'll have to wait and see. But you can get voting now for that. It's over on Straw Poll. Check out my Twitter at Chris_Gadsby to find out, to click the link and go and vote for your favourite. But now it's time to go into these key points from this report from Karen Carney. Now, it's a 128-page report, very interesting report. Most of it kind of naturally focuses on the Super League and the Championship. What I've done is gone through it, picked out the points that concern the FA Women's National League, so tiers 3 and 4. There's about 1,000 words of this, so we'll kind of dive into it, have a look at what each one means. But the key point really is that the FA Women's National League is concerned with recommendation number 10. The FA should leverage the handover of administration of the top 2 tiers of women's football to even more acutely focus on grassroots clubs and the Women's National League. So the recommendation there is that the FA hands over control to NewCo, which is, it will be kind of club run and all the rest of it in 1 and 2. Again, if you want more details on all that, the report is on the government website. You can go and read all of it. I've just gone through it missed out the bits that aren't relevant to this show in particular, and gone to those. So, clubs too should be incentivised to further drive investment in women's teams that have the opportunity to earn exponentially more than they have to date. This in turn has the potential to unlock revenues that start flowing down from the Women's Super League into the Championship and into grassroots football, while also generating enough investment to calibrate a women and girls talent pathway that is currently severely underfunded. So this is about the top, really. And what they're saying is clubs at the top, at Super League level, Championship level, should put more money into their women's teams, and it will eventually flow down into grassroots. That's what they're saying there. But point 235, simultaneously, the Women's National League has a huge role to play in connecting the grassroots game to the elite game, but is facing major challenges of its own. Essentially here, the Women's National League is kind of a stepping stone between girls football in junior clubs and schools and progression into the Championship. So it's kind of that midway point. In May 2022, this is point 236 now, in May 2022, the FA announced a new Women's National League strategy for 22 to 25, which we're aware of. It's that £1 million a year. It seeks to strengthen the third and fourth tiers of women's football in England. The strategy is targeting priority areas to enable Women's National League clubs to develop players, workforce and infrastructure. Again, this has been mentioned about before. Carol has spoken about it, the chair of the FAWNL. It's this £1 million that's been going to the clubs to help them sort out grounds, that sort of thing. Stakeholders, point 237. Now, stakeholders from the Women's National League have welcomed the National League strategy, which, yes, they did, and contributors to the review highlighted the outcome of the first stage of the competition review as a positive step forward. That being, in April 2023, the FA announced that from season 23-24, so next season, both Women's National League Premier Division title winners will be promoted to the Championship, replacing the incumbent system of a single promotion place decided via a playoff between the Northern and Southern Premier Division winners, i.e., whereas this season, where Forest and Watford had to have that game, Watford won it and got promoted, from next season that game wouldn't happen and both teams would have gone up. 238, however, the review has also heard evidence that clubs continue to face major issues, including an increasing financial gulf between tiers, a lack of accessible funding streams, fixture scheduling issues that undermine attempts to build out a core fan base. Clubs express concerns that without a clear acknowledgement of these issues, the commercial trajectory of Newco, which is this company that's going to be doing 1 and 2, could leave them behind without the opportunity to continue to participate in the pyramid. So, the concern here from National League clubs in this point is that teams in the FAWNL are facing big problems in getting funding. Let's take, for example, this £1 million as a argument's sake here. If that is divided equally between all 72 teams in the FAWNL, you're looking at just under £15,000 each, I believe, if my maths is correct, because £10,000 each would be 720,000. So just under £15,000 each. Over the course of an entire season with ground leasing and travel and all the rest of it, it helps. It's not enormous amount of money. And the concern here is if Newco is plunging money, and one of the things from elsewhere in this document is about how the desire to have the Super League and the Championship sides fully professional with elite facilities and the same thing as the men in the Premiership, all the rest of it. So there is a concern that if we go from only getting this 15,000 roughly each to all of a sudden you win the division and you've got to go full-time professional and get all these other facilities, they might struggle and not be able to actually participate. Alongside this, it is also key to note grassroots clubs should be supported to offer maximum opportunities for women and girls to participate in football. Multiple contributors to the review reflected that women's football has experienced top-down momentum driven by the success of the national team rather than the bottom-up momentum other English team sports have enjoyed. This review recognises the FA has the opportunity to fully focus on club football for women and girls as it hands over stewardship of tiers 1 and 2 to NewCo. So this point, number 239, is concerning that whereas, let's say, for example, basketball, first sport that comes into my head, lots of junior clubs play it a lot in schools. They go and then get town clubs and then go up that way. Whereas what they're finding is that in women's football, rather than having lots of kids interested in it, it has required the Lionesses to do really well at the Euros for that to trickle down, rather than it being available to a lot of people at the bottom end, and then that comes up. So what the reviewers recognised is that if the FA hand over the professional game, the FA can then focus all of its efforts on grassroots, growing grassroots, much more clubs, much more playing for fun from girls at a much younger age, and then that will feed through. It will take time, of course it will take time, but much more through the system. Then we go from point 239 to point 254. Now, this was a really interesting point to me. In football, there are specific funds available to women's teams in tiers 1 to 4 which seek to improve the standard of facilities for players, supporters and officials. The Premier League Stadium Fund is available to both men's and women's clubs. This is where the catch goes. But applicants must have security of tenure via either freehold or an uninterruptible lease of at least 10 years remaining term. The Premier League Women's Infrastructure Fund is specifically available to women's clubs at FAWNL level, tiers 3 and 4, and applicants must have security of tenure via either freehold, an uninterruptible lease of at least 5 years remaining term, or a 5-year ground share agreement. These grants are designed to promote inclusivity by enabling eligible clubs to make facility improvements to create more welcoming environments for female players, fans and officials at the ground they play at. Examples of improvements could include upgrading and modernising the changing rooms, showers, toilet facilities, etc. However, the Football Foundation and Premier League have advised uptake of these grants by women's teams is low. The review received feedback from Women's National League clubs. The majority of clubs in tiers 3 and 4 do not own the grounds they play at, and many clubs find it difficult to get leasehold agreements for longer than 3 years, which means they would not qualify for either of the funds available to them. And while this is outside of the FAWNL, I'll highlight it anyway. In addition, both schemes are only open to tiers 1 to 4, means there are many grassroots facilities outside of the FAWNL, i.e. the regional leagues, which wouldn't be eligible for the funds at all. So, essentially, the point here is there is money available for grounds to improve the facilities, but the criteria for getting this money is far greater than many of the teams in the FAWNL are able to do, so they don't qualify for it. They don't own their grounds, they share the grounds, or as I said, the lease is only 3 years or more. 3 years or less. So it's very difficult to actually get hold of this money. And if you've got somewhere else in the article, this was grassroots, not the FAWNL, somebody contributed and said, we're driving an hour to a ground with our teenage team, and they haven't got the facilities. They haven't got girls' toilets, girls' changing rooms. There's no like sanitary bins, anything like that. So it's clear there is a lot that can be done, but they've got to look at the criteria for getting that money, because otherwise it's going to be very difficult for teams to be able to get hold of this money and improve. Point 265. Additionally, the Women's National League remains an integral part of the women's football ecosystem. This review has listened to the key issues which clubs within the National League feel need to be addressed, but it has not been able to go into a comprehensive review of the FAWNL at this point, but has highlighted key issues. So, again, because this report is kind of focused on women's football as a whole, a lot of that is gone to the Super League and the Championship. Kind of expect that. The National League being amateur is mentioned, but they are talking much more here about those top two leagues. Maybe we get a review into the FAWNL at some point. Would be great. But the key issues that have been highlighted in this report. Firstly, the clubs have welcomed the change from Tier 3 into Tier 2 promotion. So it was one team, it's now two. Funding. Where, as I've mentioned already, the 10-year security of tenure requirement in the Premier League Stadium Fund and the 5-year security tenure requirement of the Women's Infrastructure Fund, access to grants has been impossible for a number of clubs. There is no central distribution mechanism currently available from the top two tiers, the WSL and the Championship, which National League clubs can leverage. Also, fixture scheduling. Where the Women's National League has raised challenges with external cup competitions often being disrupted to their standard league campaigns due to inconsistent cup competition formats and timelines, as well as varying rules around player eligibility. The Women's National League has called for entry to county cup competitions to become voluntary rather than mandatory, and for the precedence of cup competitions to be amended to exclude tiers 3 and 4, which would be consistent with the men's game. This is a big one. Fixture scheduling is the biggest bone of contention, I think, in the women's game at the moment, particularly with the board, with the likes of myself. Hence why I've got a huge board to try and keep track of everything. So what they're saying here is it shouldn't be mandatory for teams in the FA Women's National League to enter the County Cup. Also, each county has different rules with its County Cup. I remember Norfolk, Norwich didn't enter until the quarterfinals. Some teams were entering at round 1. And I'm pretty sure, although do not quote me on this, every County Cup that had an FAWNL side in it, with the exception of Cornwall with AFC St Austell, every single County Cup, I believe, was won by a FAWNL side, or at least they were in the final. And we've seen the results coming in. Middlesbrough, Oxford, Wolves winning 18, 19, 21-0 in some instances, and it is just a waste of time. And I can completely see where the FA Women's National League are coming from here, whereas, why is a County Cup game? Well, I know why a County Cup game takes precedence on a Sunday afternoon. It's because they're playing with pitches that don't necessarily have floodlights. But it's completely messing the league system up. Teams are going 2-3 months without playing a league game because of all the cup competitions. Next point, an existential threat to clubs. Last season in Tier 4, 2 clubs had to fold due to not being able to cope with the step up from Tier 5. Well, technically not true. Wyndham folded and not being able to take the step up from Tier 5. Hounslow came down from Tier 3 and went into Tier 4, but they obviously also folded. Women's National League have voiced a need for more support from the FA in helping clubs make the step up from tier to tier. Raising the profile of just a few issues raised by the Women's National League clubs cannot do justice to a complex environment in which largely volunteer-run clubs are committing time and focus to a critical part of women's football. So clearly there again, they're saying we cannot in this report go into all the issues with the FAWNL, but it needs looking at. And very finally, point 269, following the decoupling of the administration of the top two tiers of the women's game, the FA should move greater focus onto the development of the grassroots level of the game. This must include consulting with and responding to the live concerns of the grassroots club game and the Women's National League, which will enable the FA to be better placed to execute on its strategy in the area. Essentially, when the FA removes its administration of the Super League and the Championship to NewCo, it needs to focus all its energy on grassroots level tiers 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. And the top of that is the Women's National League, getting it sorted there, established there and trickling down. So that is everything from the report that concerns the FA Women's National League. Clearly the report has raised certain issues, i.e. the funding, which is just not available to clubs because the criteria is so difficult to get it, and the fixtures. Those are the two big ones that has come up from this. So yeah, those are the points from the report, really. It's going to be very interesting to see how this all changes when the FA do take much more interest in tiers 3 and 4 when they relinquish tiers 1 and 2. However, I think a lot of eyes are going to be on Newcastle this season. How does a fully professional team do in an amateur league? But I think the way that it's going, it looks as though more and more teams are going to become semi-professional. We know Portsmouth are in the south now as well. And it's going to be, I wouldn't be surprised if in a few years' time Tier 3 becomes national, full of semi-pro teams. And then Tier 4 becomes north and south. And we'll see then what happens from there. But it's a very interesting report. Read it if you have the time to. As I said, I went through it, picked out the bits concerning the Women's National League for you there to go through on this show. But yeah, that will about do it for this week's Women's Football Chat. So, I say much longer one as well. Best of luck to Chesham, Wolves, Leafield and Norton and Stockton Ancients in their summer knockout semi-final, who will be getting the 2023 trophy. And as I said, if you're interested in fantasy football or the predictor leagues, message me on Twitter at Chris_Gadsby. Let me know which leagues you're interested in taking part in, particularly in fantasy. In the predictor leagues, you can just sign up to that specific league. But in fantasy, yeah, let me know which leagues you're most interested in taking part in. And get you all set up on that ahead of the new season, which, according to the clubs, is the 20th of August. We've had nothing from the league, nothing on fixtures from the league. Since the end of last season, I think we've had about 4 tweets. The most recent tweet being, here's the video from the awards night. It's less than 3 minutes long and it's taken 7 weeks to produce. Yeah. But I'm very surprised. Last year we had a countdown from 8 weeks to go. This year we've got 5 weeks to go and we've heard absolutely nothing. No idea what's going on, but as soon as I know, you'll know as well, with all the very latest from the 3rd and 4th tiers of women's football here in England. That's the FA Women's National League. Thank you very much for watching and or listening to this week's Women's Football Chat, and goodbye.